Tafshin Lamed Hey. It's also Parshas Shkolim, so the mimer is going to be a mimer on that starts off Kisisa, being that's Parshas Shkolim. Kisisa is Rosh Bnei Yisrael. When you will count the heads of the Bnei Yisrael, each kofer nafshin, every person will give the atonement for the nefesh. This is what they will give. Kol over al pikudim, all those who pass by the count. Machts hashekel goymer half a shekel. Esem gera shekel goymer half. It's 20 gera per shekel. It's known the analysis in this in the Mamorim of Arabei Manasim. Hachel Madrush B'Torah, beginning from the Mamorim in Torah, V'adlo Drushik V'Ekrish Moirachal Me'admur, until and through the Mamorim of my father-in-law, the Friedrich Rebbe, in other words. So one of the questions is, one of the analysis is, Mao Ambre Kisisa. What does he say? Why does he say when you will count? He uses the term Kisisa. To the simple meaning of the word that what it's referring to, it's referring to counting and calculation. Since we're talking about counting and calculation, he should have used a word tifkoid, like he says, one of the words, the more common words used in Lashon Kodesh concerning counting is pekida. Or similar expressions that he could have used. Why does he use the word in the expression of tisa that indicates also on rising up and elevation? And this itself, it doesn't just state the word tisa, raising up in the simple sense, but what will be raised up? If it would just say Tisa's Bnei Yisrael, so that would indicate that you're raising up the head along with the body. So it's raising up of the entire person. But that's not the term that the pasuk uses. Why specifically do we use the term raising up of the head? What is the concept of the raising up of the head over here? Another thing that the Rebbe says we need to understand, that every person should give an atonement for his soul. Seemingly, what sin is there over here? That for this there has to be a matter of atonement. In other words, if we read the simple reading in the Chumashim beforehand, it doesn't seem to be talking about anything that it wasn't like in continuation of something, it wasn't following some event that needed some kapara. What kapara are we talking about over here? Like he adds in the mimer of the year Tafresh Ayin that was recently printed again, shall be recently meaning Tav Shalamet Hey, shall be Pasha too, in the simple sense is Lefi Shein Tzarech Limnis Yisrael, since one is not supposed to count Jewish people, and instead of counting the Jewish people, we are counting the half shekels, and by that we come to a census of how many Yidden there are. But from saying the expression kaifer, which means atonement, it seems to be it's not here for the sake of counting the Jewish people. In other words, the half a shekel is not some way how you're going to be able to count the Jewish people. So you have each one give a half a shekel, and that's how you count. But rather, that the reason why you're giving a half a shekel is as atonement for a sin, like it concludes, to atone for your souls. But seemingly, what type of sin is there over here that one needs to get atonement for it? And the Mamorim add to this question, I guess in the Maimer from Shnas Toflish Ein Eter, should be Yoisra in a movement Mashkos of Kaifer Nafshoy. Specifically, it's not understood, and even more so, it's not understood why it says the atonement of his soul, Nefesh Daike, specifically soul. Because the benefesh vaday eine shaye chet va'avim chas v'sholom. When we come to the soul of a yid, for sure the idea of sin and aveda doesn't apply. Heaven forbid. Like it says in the Zoyar, benefesh kisechta tava. That says in the beginning of Chumash Vayikra. It says over there a soul that will sin. So the Zohar says on it, Tava, you need to read it with a question mark. Nefesh kisechta, it's a wonder. How can a soul sin? So in other words, we established the concept that a soul sinning is a very extraordinary and unusual type of event. So therefore, if he's going to tell you need atonement, it shouldn't be atonement for souls, it should be atonement for the person. Why do you say the term atonement for souls when the soul, the nefesh, is not applicable to the idea of atonement? We're holding on the top of page Vav. We can add to this by prefacing Mashakos Kol Oiver al Pikudim, what it says in the pasuk, whoever passes by on the count. The simple meaning of this is Shekoy al Inyan Aminyan. It's referring to the idea of the count, the number. That's why it says that they're passing by the count, that they pass by Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu would take count of them. But in the Mamorim, it's explained that the word pikudim is from the word a lack, a deficiency, something is missing. Like it says, but there was the whole story with Yonis and David Melech, that when he was a guest by the table of Shaul HaMelech, and he was absent because they were trying to determine if Shaul was going to kill David. So it says over there, "Vayipokid Mekayim David," that David HaMelech's place of at the table was empty. So the Mamorim say Pikudim is also meaning a lack, something that's missing. V'adla Pirish Chazal, until the explanation of Chazal, Shekol ha'oiver al Pikudim, that the Chazal say, what does it mean? One that passes over the Pikudim means Koy al manda over al Pikude de Oiraisa. It's referring to someone that is over from the word Aveda. He transgressed Pikude, meaning from the word a tzivui in Aramaic. A pkuda is a command. So they are transgressing the commands of the Eraisa. That's what it means of the Torah. That's what it means Oiver on Pikudim. Va'ad, and until the worst transgression. So it's not just a deficiency, a lack, Pikudim from the word lack, but even worse than that. Va'ad l'cheta egel, until the sin of the golden calf. V'zeh sheparshas shkol nemara acher cheta egel. The Chazal say that even though in the order of the Torah it's not that way, but the Chazal explained that Parsha Shkolim was said after the event with the Cheta Egel. So therefore, and Shehu Hepach Klos HaTorah, and the sin of the golden calf, the sin of the Egel is Avodah Zarah, which Avodah Zarah is the opposite of the entire general idea of the Torah. Before Betanya explained in Tanya, mitzvahs v'azharas avodah zarah, that the mitzvah and the warning of avodah zarah, him shnei dibros harashonim anoich v'lo yilcha. These are the two first commandments that it says anoich Hashem Elokecha, and should not have any other gods. Heim klolos kol Torah kula. This is the general, all-inclusive matter of the entire Torah. These two dibros. Kedibur anoichi kol kol machmit says. Because the dibur of Anoich Havai Lekecha includes in it all the 248 positive commandments. and you should not have any other gods, includes in it the whole all the 365 negative commandments. So therefore, the Chet Egel is the total opposite of the entire Torah. So when we're saying about Oiver ala Pikudim, according to the inner meaning of it, is that he transgressed the Torah, and not just he transgressed the Torah, he transgressed like the entirety of the Torah, because it came for the Chet Egel. So the Rebbe continues on line 15. According to this, it's even more difficult what he says. Kisisa. Why does it say kisisa? It's indicating raising up and being high. When one finds himself in a state of raising up and being high, it's not possible. It should be the idea of a sin that necessitates atonement. Even more, it's difficult. Who the indication of the pasuk is when you will raise up the heads of the Bnei Yisrael. It's the idea of raising up. When you will count the Bnei Yisrael, which is the idea of raising up. Only then will be that you will give the atonement of the soul. Seemingly, if one is raised up, the whole idea of atonement doesn't apply because you're on such a high level. Ois base, line 23. Yuvim behagdim closing in the machzah shekels be understood by first prefacing the general idea of the half a shekel. Shenemar la'achri agdama desisas roish gomer. That said after the introduction of you will count the heads. Zayitnu gomer. This is what they shall give. Machzah shekel gomer, half a shekel, etc. Esrim gera shekel. That every shekel is made up of 20 gera. Like it's analyzed in the Mamorim, that seemingly it's not understood. Why doesn't it say that you have to give 10 gera? Instead of saying 20 gera is a shekel, give a half a shekel, just say l'chatchila, give 10 gera. It's explained why there's an emphasis on a half a shekel, not just on the amount of 10 gera. In the general service of a person, there's the portion, there's a part that the person does independently. They do on their own, in the way of an inspiration down here below. Top of page 9, and there is a part that comes down through this from above in a way of an inspiration from above. Like it's explained in the Siddur, in the note on Tikkun Chatzos, concerning the completion and perfection of love and awe, that complete and perfect love and awe of Hashem, they come from above. Through prefacing the avodah of love and awe down here below. So that is the two halves, as we'll soon explain, the two halves of a shekel, but the two halves in a person's service. There's what he does on his own, and does as a result of that, and as a response to that, what he gets from above. So he says in line 5, Vizel Gama Indian shall machzah shekel. That's also the idea of a half a shekel. Shavoidus adam b'chol eser koiches nafshi, which is hinted by the eser geira. Ein ala machzah bolvad. We need to know that the person's service, even though he's doing the service with all of his 10 soul powers, that's why it's hinted in the 10 geira, is only a half. When he does his half with all his 10 koich nefesh, so then the other half comes from above. Then only becomes a holy shekel shekol esrim geira, that includes the 20 geira. But this idea is in such a manner that the half that comes from above is not something that is independent. It's not something that's separate. It's not that there is if we would just say you give 10 and Hashem gives 10, there wouldn't be seen that it's part of one whole. But rather the point of emphasizing that the 10 that you give is a half of what goes on above. So therefore, Ella hi misachedes imamachtzis shenasai de avodas ha'adam. The half that comes from above becomes joined with the half that happens through the service of a person. Upayelis, and it affects shokol protein yoni avodas ha'adam, all the specifics of the matter of a person's service. Heim bekoiches pnimim, veheim bekoiches makifim, whether he's doing his service involving his inner soul powers, his eser koiches hanefesh, his intellect, his emotions, whether he's doing his service with his transcendent soul powers, with his will, with his tainug, and so on. Nasim ba'oifen shalag ba'avis nasus, that because his half joined with the half that comes from above, so everything that he did becomes in a way of raised up and elevated. That's the idea that your head becomes raised up. It's felt in the avoida with the koiches pnimim, the koiches makifim, the highest koiches, that all of this is not his doing, it's all coming as amshacha that comes from above. Similar to what's explained in the Maimon that begins with the words, you should not have a woman that loses her pregnancies, chas v'sholom, or a barren woman in your land. This is connecting with the Parsha of the week. This is in Parsha Mishpatim. That a person needs to focus and pay attention, and to know faithfully. All the love and awe that comes down to him, Umatas Elikim, is all a gift of Hashem, that this is all something that it gives him the power that empowers him, to make blossom and grow the love of Hashem and his awe on his face, that it's not something that comes by the power of the person that does his own avodah. That's his own avodah. He needs to realize everything he's doing is by being empowered from above. Ois Gimel, line 24. According to this will be understood what it says. All that pass by on those that have been counted, that's also from the expression of a lack. Pikudim, like we said before, is that of a ki pocket meshavecha, that it's showing on a lack. Meaning, though one finds himself in a state of being upon high and raised up, like we said before, that's in Ois Aleph, that's the meaning of kisisam, shenoisef lakach, שיש לפרש, שהכוונה בזה היא לחיסורם בדקס על קלפונים. In addition to the fact that you could explain that there's always the possibility for a deficiency in a subtle manner, in a fine manner. That's why it says that it's Pikudim, even though he's in the state of Kisisos Rosh B'nai Yisrael, even though he's in the state of being raised up, there's still a lack, because as high as we are, there's always something that's considered in a subtle manner, in a more refined manner, that's lacking. The Rebbe says in the brackets, in a similar vein, we could say what it says to atone for your souls. She'ena kavana le'inyan hakaparo mechilas oven, top of page ches. Ba'oifen she'maskirim le'davar v'chatzi davar chulu. We're not talking over here about atonement and forgiveness, so that in that Malmaila they won't like punish him and mention anything beyond Madin, which means an atonement for an actual severe Avera, but rather Ela Kavanihi, but rather the intention in Kapara that he means over here is sheyeh l'rotzon lefnei Hashem u'merutzav v'chaviv. He should be accepted by Hashem, beloved like he was before Kim V'vor begeres tshuva, like it's explained in the Geras tshuva that after a person does tshuva, charot ala'avar, kabbalah lahaba, and because he does a full tshuva, is a maskim ledavar v'chatzi davar, that they'll never mention anything about it. But still, there's all the fasts that's brought down in the different svarim, and in that stead, there's tzedakah. The Alter Rebbe says, to be able to be in a state of merutza v'chaviv, they should be in a state of being favored and beloved like he was before the sin. And for that, that's a higher level. That's a more subtle form of lack and deficiency that is possible to be even when a person is in a state of kisisas roish, even when their head is raised up. So there's still that subtle level of being merutza v'chaviv, and to be able to bring that level of atonement and cleansing. So in addition to that meaning, so the Rebbe says, in addition to saying that despite being on a high level, there is the still subtle types of deficiencies that a person needs to fix up. Now the Rebbe is going to add in line 4 that it's actually being on a higher level that brings the deficiencies to the fore. Let's see in line 4 after the brackets, Yeshleimer, we could say that when we're talking over here about lechaper al nafsheseichem, the atonement is l'chisar and kaifer nafshoy, he l'chisar and shenase davke mitzad inyan hagba v'aisnases desisas roish. We're talking about a deficiency and a lack that occurs only and specifically because of the person's high level and being raised up, that we're saying raise up the head. Similar to explained in the Mamorim, Hadtam sha'omerim b'shmeina esra davke slach lanu. Shmeina esra is like the apex, the highest place, the highest level in davening. Why specifically in Shmeina esra do we say slach lanu? And similarly, Valderach Zamiris Tachnun Lachrish Shmeina esra davke, the same thing that we recite Tachnun specifically after we daven Shemana Esra. Seemingly, Tachnun is something that should be done beforehand, and Chassidus explains that's the idea of Krishma Shalamita, to prepare ourselves for the next day, and that's the Kavod Rosh before davening that the Chazal speak about. But here we've worked through all these levels, Psuk de Zimra and the Ave and B'chol Meidecha of Krishma. By the time we're standing by Shemana Esra, we're Ka'avda Kamemari, we have a full bittul, we're bowing down to Hashem. Where does Slach Lanu come in over there? And after Shemana Esra. So the Mamorim explain, line 9, Shadavka Mitzad Akirav Lalakus, specifically out of the closeness to godliness, Shaidei Haizbonus to Krishma Chulu, through the meditation of Krishma, Azai Margishu Choyte, then he feels that he's a sinner. Just like it says that he feels that he's transgressing on the mitzvahs. That's how we translated it before. Why specifically after all of this does he feel like he sinned? Like, for example, someone is starting before the king. Even a minor movement is like like someone making a circle in the air to signal someone. It's considered rebellious, even though outside the presence of the king, making a circle in the air is nothing. Still in all, the closer one is to the king, so then even the most minor thing is considered a deficiency and a lack and a sin. Because he's so close, he's raised up, kisisas roish, just like by Shemana Esra, he's after the whole avodah of davening, so he becomes a level of lack, that the level of the David Melch's place was missing, empty. Through that will be that you will be remembered they will remember him by the table because your place is empty. So it's like the very opposite. The emptiness brings to a remembrance. The bittul is similar to what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said. I am only a sign. In other words, I have no mitzias for myself. The Rebbe says, like it's known, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai opened this up, this becomes applicable to every Yid to be able to state that I'm only a sign from your heads until even your water carriers. Having this bittul, having this feeling like a servant before the king, that everything is a considered like a lack and deficiency, that feeling of bittul itself, that itself causes that the lack becomes fulfilled or filled up.